Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria, and welcome back to our Dresden Files reread challenge, where I am attempting to read all of the Dresden Files series before DragonCon, which starts August 29th. I haven't seen any of the videos prior to this one. There are 3. I will link them down below in the description. I'm going to read the back of the book to you, and then I'm going to attempt to see what I remember of this book, and then we're going to get to reading. So let's go ahead and get started. Ever since his girlfriend left town to deal with her newly acquired taste for blood, Harry Dresden has been down and out in Chicago. He can't pay his rent, he's alienating his friends, he can't even recall the last time he took a shower. The only professional wizard in the phone book has become a desperate man. And just when it seems things can't get any worse, in saunters the Winter Queen of Fairy. She has an offer Harry can't refuse if he wants to free himself of the supernatural hold his fairy godmother has over him, and hopefully end his run of bad luck. All he has to do is find out who murdered the Summer Queen's right-hand man, the Summer Knight, and clear the Winter Queen's name. It seems simple enough, but Harry knows better than to get caught in the middle of fairy politics. Until he finds out that the fate of the entire world rests on his solving this case. No pressure or anything. What do I remember? Not much. Francis, I honestly don't remember anything. I remember this has a lot to do with fairies. I know what the story is. This rings a bell, story-wise. I think Murphy is in this book more, maybe? I don't know. I know he goes to fairy. Girl, I'm gonna have to stop doing these what I recall. Probably till we get to like near the end of the series. These books that I haven't read in 20 years, I could not tell you. I don't know. We do meet the Winter Queen. I know we meet the Summer Princess. I think the Summer Princess has something to do with it. I do think she has something to do with it. This isn't the book though where things really hit the fan with the fairies. This is kind of like the teaser to when shit hits the fan later on. That I know. But I do think the Summer Princess has something to do with what's going on. And I think we get more of Thomas's story in this one, I want to say. Maybe. And I don't know if we meet that guy that Murphy ends up dating for a little while. Isn't that the assassin that she kind of dates for a little while? You know what I'm talking about? You probably don't if you're... I don't know. These prediction parts are getting pretty terrible. Anywho, I wanted to go ahead and get this going because, as I said, I am on a time crunch and want to get through these books, but I really enjoyed Grave Peril, so I'm looking forward to picking up this one. That I'm gonna go ahead and get started reading tonight. Maybe I'll check in with you halfway, depending on how things are going. If not, I'll do what I did in Grave Peril and just check in with you at the end once I finished it and give you my philosophical thoughts that seem to be happening whenever I'm talking about these books. So I'll see you then. Hey friends! So, oh, I just dropped a bookmark. We're back in the corner. So a lot really goes on in this book as per usual. I really was excited to get reintroduced to the White Council because, you know, we hear in the first 3 books, we hear chattings, little things about the White Council. The only person who we meet who is in the White Council prior to this book is Morgan, and Morgan only appears in Stormfront, and then our homie reappears here in the 4th book. And I will say, I know how Morgan is described in the book, but I still picture the actor who played him in the TV show that had 1 season. Looks like this, you've probably seen him before. Yeah. So that's what I picture Morgan to look like, despite what the book tells me. But I was very excited to revisit this introduction to the White Council. So this book picks up nine or 10 months after the events of the third book, because we know that because they mentioned how long Susan's been gone. So I mean, we knew that Susan left. That was like kind of at the end of the third book. But we start off with Harry and Billy outside in a park in Chicago trying to look into why it's raining frogs. And we get a good insight into where Harry has been since we last connected with our characters. And I think what Butcher does really well, and what I guess I didn't appreciate or didn't quite identify when I first read through these books, is how much Butcher makes sure that his characters don't just like insta recover from traumatic events that happened to them in previous stories. So in this, Harry is become a bit of a recluse. He's clearly depressed. He's not taking care of himself. He's spending all of his time trying to find a cure for Susan's vampirism, or what will turn into vampirism if she ever gives into her dark urges and things like that. And so his friends are super concerned about him. We see here, we kind of made a jump between Grave Peril and the Summer Nights, because Billy is taking a bit more of a sidekick role here in this book, which I knew. I think I mentioned that in Full Moon, that I remember that Billy and, is it Georgiana or Georgina? Georgia? Oh, God. That they and the alphas have a larger role. Like, they continue to come up in the book series. So it was nice to see Billy again. He continuously talks about how Billy has great abs and is having a lot of ab envy, I guess. But Billy is just really pointing out that Dresden has not been doing well. He's not paying his bills, and Billy even goes so far as to return a message of somebody who is looking for his services. And after a hit job gone bad in the park, Dresden decides that he needs to take his young friend's advice, and he goes back to his office after all of that, and is greeted by a woman who clearly, as he's describing, is this like ethereal beauty. And I was pretty sure that I knew whom that was going to be, and that is of course the Winter Queen of Fairy, Mab. And essentially we get the hook for the story. So Mab actually purchased Leah's bargain, Dresden's debt to Leah, in order to use it to convince Dresden to help them solve who killed this man, Ron, who we find out quickly is the Summer Knight. And so she essentially strong arms him into it, basically because after that, Harry has to head over to the White Council, and essentially it's a set trap of Summer is basically like, we're not going to get involved in the war that was started in book 3 with the Red Court and the White Council, but Winter is keeping the option open. And essentially Harry is given a trial by the senior council of the White Council of that if he can solve this case and secure safe passage through Never Never in like the Winter Courts area, that Harry will retain his status as a full-fledged wizard and be on the White Council. It will not be handed over to the Red Court, because that was the one stipulation that they made when the Red Court sent over the White Council, essentially their demands to end the fighting. So that kind of launches us into this story. I think I said in the last book, I had mentioned that again, like, really does a great job, like, setting up for each book and kind of laying down nuggets that will build into something else in another book. So a lot of what we focused on in book 3 with Dresden and Michael was Harry's reluctance to really admit his feelings for Susan, and a lot of that had to do with Elaine. And of course, because of that, we find out that Elaine has not passed away. Did not pass away back when all this traumatic stuff with Justin happened. So we learn that she is actually the summer emissary to Harry's winter emissary, and so she basically is asking Harry to help her stay, you know, to protect her and help her out with this, because she is in danger and she really doesn't have anybody to turn to, because the White Council thinks she's dead, but she also was apparently, quote unquote, apparently a thrall of Justin's, and would not be safe with the White Council, because clearly Harry isn't safe with the White Council. Morgan, as Elaine, like, is in his apartment, pops in and essentially tries to goad Dresden into attacking him. So there will be a justification for essentially removing his status as a full-fledged wizard and just hand him over to the Red Court and end this war. It's quite a bit going on. We meet McCoy, who is Harry's, I guess I'll spin back just a little bit. So we meet some of the characters in the White Council, like the senior members of the White Council. And the one that's probably most notable is McCoy. That is the man who Harry was sent to, because he was still a minor when everything with Justin happened, to finish his training as a wizard. And he is, you know, kind of your stereotypical white American man who is self-sufficient and lives up in the hills in the country and doesn't want much to do with anything besides his land and just live his little life. That's essentially who McCoy is. Obviously, I know a bit more about him, so I'm going to keep that a little closer to the chest, because I do know what gets revealed about him later on. He was one of my more favorite characters in the books from what I remember. I do have to say, as with some of these other books, there are certain descriptions and word choices that I don't particularly like in here. I wonder if I had a newer edition of this book, if maybe some of those words would have been changed. So I do think it's good to look at kind of the differences that just 20 years can make when it comes to how we understand talking about different ethnicities. I also did not like that I'm listening to the audiobook that I picked up on Libby, and the voice actor who did it gives a woman named Mai, who I believe is Chinese, because I believe she's speaking to her apprentice in Chinese in the book, and gives her an accent. Which just wasn't necessary. So again, I'd be interested if anybody has picked up a newly printed one, if some of those things would have changed considering the time period. And I'm sure that both Butcher and his editors, you know, have a different understanding of how to appropriately incorporate diversity into your books without using terms that are just not the best terms to use. As I mentioned, that Harry and Murphy are still suffering a lot from what happened with the nightmare back in book 3, and so there is a really great scene between Harry and Murphy where he is essentially trying to get more information about this man Ron, because the police attributed it to be, you know, an accident that he fell down the stairs, and so they didn't pursue any kind of investigation on it. So it's not an open case. So in order to get more information, he goes to Murphy to try to get this case. And we're seeing that Murphy is definitely struggling with trying to deal with her, what seems to be a bit of, post-traumatic stress, and trying to find some balance, doing some self-medicating. And there was something in there, again, a term that I was pretty surprised, I think just took me a little bit aback. He did use the R word. I'm not going to say it because I know that can be, a little triggering to people. So to describe the violation that Murphy felt with the nightmare playing with her memories and her dreams, and I definitely understood where Butcher was coming from. It was just like such a stark, I was like, knew what he was trying to say. Again, I think like saying that she felt really violated by this intrusion into her mind and the lack of control she had over it. I think we could have used descriptors to paint the picture of the emotions that he was trying to depict without like giving a direct contrast to that. Was something that it just took me a little bit aback. It's important as myself as an adult coming back in this time period to look at some of the things and some of the choices and understand that we can look critically on those things and still be able to take the work in and enjoy it, but also acknowledge those things. So I think there's a good balance for that. So I did want to take a second for that. I was excited to see that Toot was back in action, and they had he's got his little army, which I just love. That scene is so much fun. I really want now, if you watch like Rachel Maskey's YouTube channel, she's always making like little guys, and I think definitely after the move, but probably after we finish all these books, possibly I'd like to try to attempt to make myself my own little Toot with his little like swords and stuff, because just reading the description again got me so excited, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to make my own little Toot. My own little Toot. We got introduced to the idea that there are 3 queens in each court: the past, the present, and the future. So we've met Mab, who's the current Queen of Winter. We've now met Maeve, who is like the princess. In my predictions for this book, I did mention that I thought the Princess of Summer had something to do with that. And so when I was saying the Princess of Summer, I think I was thinking of the future. And they're not described necessarily as princesses, but that's kind of in my mind what they are. So we met Maeve. She's a bit of a wild card and was basically trying to convince Dresden to sleep with one of her maidens and give her that child. Fortunately, Dresden could keep it together long enough to realize he did not want to do that. And then we've just finished meeting with Aurora, who is the Princess of Summer. And of course, is kind of a contrast to Maeve, not as unstable seeming, and just, I think I'm still on the right path. I think my brain wasn't lying to me. I do think she had something to do with the death of the knight still. And they're the changelings, and I thought this was really interesting. So in lore, at least from what I understand of changelings, is they are typically fae that are replaced, like they take the infant of a human and they replace it with a fae baby. And in this, changelings are half fae. And so they have to decide if they're going to be with Winter or Summer or be mortal. It's kind of like a weird in-between. And so Ron was protecting a couple of changelings. And so we've met some of them now. And there is a girl by the name of Lily who is missing. And she seems to possibly have some ties to Slate, who is the current Winter Knight. And they're trying to kind of point Harry in that direction. But I do think, if you remember, I had made the I had a vague memory that Murphy ends up dating somebody who is like a mercenary for some time in the story. I think that's Slate. I might be wrong, so we'll see. I know they get introduced to one another, but I don't think it's in this book that they started dating, but I do think that they date or like hook up for a little while. If that's the person I was thinking of, which I think it is, because I can't think of who else it would be. So I'm pretty sure it's him. I think that is where I'm going to wrap this up. I just felt like chatting with you all about that for a few minutes. When I say a few, my camera says that was 25 minutes. So for 25 minutes. So I will check in with you again once we have finished Summer Night, which hopefully will be tonight. That way we can move on to Death Mask. Hello. We are back home from checking out our new place that we're moving to in 2 weeks. You probably won't see the moving vlog before this one. Actually, you definitely won't. So, don't mind my backgrounds. This is moving backgrounds, but we have officially finished Summer Night, the 4th book in the Dresden Files series, and I know we did a pretty big catch-up when we were about 60% of the way through, so I don't have like too terribly much more to add, just a couple things here that I wanted to talk about before we go ahead and wrap up this book. And the first one is, I would like to apologize to the fictional character of Murphy for ever insinuating that Slate was the guy with whom she had a relationship with. Clearly he was not the mercenary. Sorry, is that too bright? Let it adjust. Clearly he was not the mercenary I was thinking of. I was just taking a perusal of the back of the book of Death Rights, which is the 5th book in the series that we're gonna be picking up today. And I think maybe that starts there. But anywho, obviously not. Obviously not Lloyd Slate. So there's that. But in other news, I was in fact right that the Summer Princess, the Lady of Summer, Aurora, was in fact the perpetrator of the death of the Summer Night. So one Victoria memory, one not Victoria memory. We're 1-1 here on this book. So yeah, I was right on that one. I felt pretty sure of it the further I read it. And also, I think, I was thinking about this yesterday, that if you've seen the newest Spider-Man movies, like the ones with Tom Holland, I kind of feel like, you know how we find out at the end of the 3rd movie, spoilers if you haven't seen it, of the 3rd one, is that Homecoming? No, what is that one called? I can't remember off the top of my head, but that 3rd one in that particular series with Tom Holland, how you kind of realize that the whole 3 of the movies were his origin stories. I kind of feel like that's how the first 3 books of Dresden were a little bit. And now it's almost like we're kind of moving into a new era of Harry and the Dresden Files. That's kind of how it kind of felt in this book, because although we have Harry getting himself back together after everything with Susan, we also have a fairly plot-heavy book where we're like, Harry is doing a lot of introspection, but I feel like it's not as much as it had been in Full Moon and Grave Peril. So I feel like we are speeding quickly through a lot of different things to kind of get to the end where they actually go into the fairy battleground, which was a really fun scene. I enjoyed kind of some of the random fae that were floating around, like the bumblebees. I liked how Mab had like a path of blue that they could follow whenever there was an enemy approaching. A path of green could come. And I also like the idea that there was for some reason there was just music all around at all times. I thought that was really fun as well. I do like that there is some D&D mentioned in the end of this book, and I do think Harry is an interesting mix of a bit of a barbarian and a wizard, because he does tap into his rage a lot with his powers. So I thought that was a fun nod, and I enjoyed having all the kids around. I thought Billy and the Alphas, Georgia, I know I was struggling with remembering her name. Georgia didn't really have a big part, but I do think Billy was a fun little sidekick for this one. And I also was excited for Lily and Fix, for them to come back in the picture later on. I did know that Lily was still alive, and I knew there was something going on, but I could not remember that she was the statue and that they were going to use the unraveling for her to like set up the power imbalance. The only other thing that I really enjoyed, and I remembered the premise of the scene of Harry meeting the mothers and really liking it, and rereading it and actually experiencing it again, I did really enjoy it. I like how they like live in a cottage together and kind of spend their twilight years together. I also do think giving Harry the chance to kind of reconcile things with Elaine was great, because obviously in the first 3 books we saw the emotional damage that the betrayal that Elaine had done to Harry had really done with his relationships. So I think it was super smart of Butcher to include Elaine in this book and allow that bit of healing for Harry. Did not remember that at all. So it was great to enjoy that anew. I also really, I think I touched on before, but I really was happy to see Harry and Murphy working together in the way that I remember them working together in my mind. I think in this book we see both of them kind of moving past the hurt that they'd done to one another and moving out of the trauma that they experienced in book 3 together. So I thought it was a great marrying of that and a new phase of their relationship, which I'm really excited about as well. Overall, I gave this 4 stars. I really do enjoy the fae elements in the Dresden Files. I am definitely curious to see how the next book is going to pan out for me. I don't really remember too much about it. No, I'm putting Death Mask and Blood Rites together. I'm excited to move on to Death Mask. So I will check in with you tomorrow, or maybe later tonight. Or maybe I should do it right now. Probably should do it right now. Do our little predictions here. But I'm gonna wrap that up. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you read this book and you had any thoughts on it that you want to share, feel free to drop them in the comments, or just leave a little fairy for Toot and his friends. If you stick around for more Bookish Nerds content, feel free to subscribe. I upload every Sundays, usually earlier than this one, and most Wednesdays. And until the next one, I hope you read a good book. I hope you find some joy. And most importantly, I hope that you do something to make the world a better place. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye-bye.